Well, hello. Welcome to or welcome back to Creative Weirdo. Today's conversation is one that I find to be very important. And obviously, if you came here, you're a little bit interested in the creative process, at least, because my podcast name is literally Creative Weirdo. So I'm going to just say it like it is. And if it resonates, that's great. And this episode is definitely for you. And if it ruffles your feathers, it's probably even more for you. So this is kind of a blanket statement, but you cannot say that you believe in a higher power, whatever that is to you. Today I'm going to use the word God, but you can call it source, creator, the divine, whatever it might be. You cannot believe in God and deny your own creative abilities. Okay, we're going to get into it. So just laying the groundwork here. I'm going to kind of weave spirituality into the conversation today where it makes sense. But ultimately, we're talking about creating art and the idea that everyone is an artist. Whether or not you claim that title, you are an artist. You were created by something. So creativity is innate in you. It's something that all of us hold. And I think on a widespread scale, almost all of us are facing creative blockages on a daily basis, even if you are someone who is actively pursuing a creative project or idea. So I hope this episode helps you kind of get the fuck out of your own way and also come to understand what part of your mind is talking to you whenever doubt comes up in the process, whenever you feel disconnected from yourself. We're going to get into all of that. So, I started off by saying that we are all artists. It's really hard to say words with T's and S's and trying to actually enunciate when you're on the mic. And I can't drive myself crazy over it, but you know what I'm saying. I think we forget sometimes that there's literally a 1 in a trillion gazillion chance that we were put on this earth. Like, you yourself are a miracle. And that has nothing to do with like how fertile your mother was when she had you and stuff. And like if you were a miracle baby, whatever. No. We are all miracles, period. We are all miracles. And if you want to get scientific with that, you can look up the fucking science on it. I'm not here to do that. I'm not a fucking scientist, okay? I'm just someone who likes to create things because I think that's what we're meant to do. And when we see people getting compensated for their creative ideas, we look at them as if they're these chosen ones. But we are all chosen ones because we are all living on this earth. You know what I mean? Like, it is a privilege to be alive. As much as being alive can feel like the worst thing in the world sometimes because you feel everything, that is the beauty of life, is the fact that we can feel those things and we can actually use language and communication and human connection as ways to understand what we're feeling and put our feelings into words and all those things. So today we're going to talk about the power of our words and how that actualizes things, which kind of ties in the idea of manifestation and how it's not as fucking woo-woo as we think. We've actually manifested every single part of our life up to this point. Okay. And when we're talking about spirituality, obviously, that plays a role in it, but you're constantly co-creating with the universe, whatever you want to call it. Your creative ideas didn't just fall out of the sky. Well, I guess they kind of did in some sort of way, but your creative ideas were gifted to you from God. They're not just a thought that's passing by, okay? And they'll feel that way when you don't actually give them the time of day, okay? Those creative impulses that you have every single day, because we all do, whether or not you realize it, we are always having these creative impulses. We just sometimes don't give them the energy that they ultimately need to thrive. It's like plant theory, bro. Like, everything is plant theory because we're living beings and so are plants. Like, a plant needs fucking water and sunshine to grow. A creative idea needs your attention and attunement and presence in order for it to actually expand and actualize itself. Like, if you have a creative idea to write a book and you just let that pass by without bringing your attention to it, you're never going to write that book. But that doesn't mean that the creative idea didn't come to you, Whether or not you grew up religious, you identify with some religious denomination of any sort, whatever. We all know what religion is. Religion is a part of our lives in one way or another. Like, it still is something that's happening around us that we are consciously aware of. And one of the things that religion relies very heavily on is prayer. And the idea of prayer, I think you can kind of ping pong, go back and forth with, and have a lot of conversations about, to be honest. But the core of prayer has to do with gratitude and presence. Like, I grew up Catholic, and I don't really resonate with religion as a whole, but I have my own relationship with God and Jesus and all those things, and I still learn great things from their scriptures and stuff like that. And we can have a whole conversation about that on another episode. But the way that I was taught to pray was to find something that you're grateful for. Pray for something that has been bringing you distress, whether it's in your physical body, mind, whatever it is, and pray for someone else. Pray for the less fortunate. And I think, I have my whole ideologies and thoughts about religion and all those things, but I do think that it teaches you at a young age, if you grew up in it, to have a sort of moral compass. Like, this is not me demonizing religion, because I'm obviously a very spiritual person, and we all are, whether or not we claim that. We are spiritual beings experiencing what it's like to be human. So there's that. But yeah, I do think religion does teach you this sort of moral compass. But the thing that I realized about religion is that it felt too rigid for me. And maybe that's just the denomination I grew up in or whatever. I'm not here to play that game today, okay? I'm not here to go down that rabbit hole. But it almost feels like there's one right way of showing your gratitude to God. There's one right way of living your life to the fullest expression under God's will, And in some ways, human beings do need to have structures and laws and things like that to keep us on track. But I think we take them too literally sometimes. Because, like, taking the prayer example, if you're praying to God and in your head, you're just checking off a list of things that you need to do in order to be deemed worthy of his grace, then you're not actually praying. You're not actually praying, because what prayer actually is meditation. And what meditation is awareness, presence. Presence is honestly the root of everything. And I know I sound like a broken record because I bring up presence all the time, but sue me. I have a podcast and I teach yoga. So what do you want from me? I'm sorry. So I was meditating the other day, and I had one of those really simple thoughts that when they hit you, it almost feels like I've had that thought before, but like, why was it so hidden in the depths of my brain, And the thought that came to me was that the way that we show our gratitude to God is by being present. And that's something that I think I've unconsciously always lived by. But when I actually put that into words, I was like, oh, duh. But with that being said, when we're talking about creativity, the only way for us to be creative is to allow ourselves to be present. You can't really teach creativity, but you can teach people how to let themselves be creative. And presence is the same thing. And that's what I do when I'm teaching yoga. I cannot stand in front of my class and know 100% that these people are all being present, but I can try my best to guide them to let themselves be present in what they're feeling in their bodies in the moment. So creativity and presence are hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. And when you're harnessing your creativity, and when I say harnessing, I don't mean controlling, okay? We're not controlling our creativity. We're letting it flow through us. And that's the biggest thing that we often forget, is that number one, we are co-creating with the universe. But number two, our creativity is flowing through us, not from us, okay? And God is us. We were created by God. So the same force that created you is the same energy that is flowing through you when you get those little creative insights. It's the same thing. So if your creative insights are gifts from God, they're these little nudges to guide you onto the divine path that is created for you that only God understands, then it's in your goodwill to follow those insights, not to doubt them and then follow them, to follow them blindly. Okay. And that brings up the conversation of fear and trust. And I don't want to get super, super deep into this because I've talked about fear and trust on so many episodes at this point, but it's obviously always going to be relevant to the conversation of creativity because, I mean, if you're not trusting, then you're fearing. It point blank period. If it's a yes, it's a no, right? So if you're not trusting, then you're just operating from fear. So, one quote that I really like that I don't know who said, but some smart person said that faith and fear both ask you to believe in something that you can't see. Okay. So, whether you want to take that as your relationship with a higher power, or you want to take that as your relationship with creativity, which in a way is the same fucking thing. Okay. Stay with me here. Stay with me here. When we're fearing things, that is our ego. Okay, that's our ego. And our ego is really just trying to keep us safe. But the thoughts that it's creating in our mind are not productive thoughts. They're not thoughts that are getting us to the next level, that are helping us grow. They're just trying to keep us stagnant because the here and now, the life that we know outside of us right now, even if it's not our ideal situation, we know that it's safe. So our mind hangs on to that with dear life, okay? Your ego is never not going to be a part of the conversation. I honestly don't think it's possible to completely shake your ego. You're a human being that has a brain, and that's what our brains do. Our brains are wired, okay? Like, I've talked a million times about how your soul and your mind are two different things. And intuition is completely soul driven, whereas impulses are completely your monkey mind, okay? That the human brain. And I'm not demonizing the human brain. I'm literally a psychology major. I'm not demonizing the human brain. I think it's fascinating and it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do when it's working how it's been conditioned to work. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything our mind is telling us. Just because they're our thoughts in our mind doesn't mean that they actually belong to us. Okay. We still have our own discernment to choose what we want to believe in life. And there's this Carl Jung quote that says, I don't believe, I know. And I know that sounds kind of like ambiguous as fuck, but when you're someone who lets the creative voices talk to you, like you're letting God speak to you, okay? When you're someone who does that, no matter how far along you are on your creative journey, you start to differentiate the feeling of you seeking something outside of yourself versus something seeking you. And the moment that you realize that something is seeking you is when you start to realize the passion you have behind it. And our passions were put on our hearts for a reason, okay? You cannot believe that certain people were meant to do certain things and certain people helped you through your life at the moment that they were supposed to help you and all those things and not believe that the passions that were put on your heart were not meant to be sought out and explored, you know? So I just said that we can use our discernment to choose what we believe to be true, okay? And when we're talking about truth, truth is something that we cannot rationalize. We cannot make sense of. And that's why a lot of the times we feel this urge to fight back with truth because the logical part of our minds does not like when we are not able to make sense of something. And that's why people are atheists. You know, like obviously everyone has their own journeys and things like that, but if you don't believe in God, it's typically because you just don't have solid evidence for it. Okay? That's what atheism comes down to at the end of the day. It's just you don't know whether it's real or not, so you choose not to believe in it. And I'm not here to bash you on your beliefs because that's your life, but then you live a pretty purposeless life and everything's happening to you rather than for you. And that's not how you live your life from gratitude, from presence, from any of the sort of things that we know we need to live a happy, fulfilling life. But if that's your mojo, that's your fucking mojo. And I'm not going to bash you for it because it doesn't affect me. Okay. It don't affect me. Obviously I would love everyone in the world to believe in a higher power, but like I said, that's a conversation for another day. Okay. I think I'm going to do a whole conversation on my relationship with God and where I stand with spirituality and things like that, because I always intertwine it in my podcast episodes, but I feel like I've never had a full ass conversation of like, hey, this is what I believe. So I don't know. Wow, I'm really going on a million tangents today. I really am. But actually, that has everything to do with what I was saying, because I was talking about the logical part of our brain needing to make sense of things, right? So when I'm creating, and if you are an avid listener of mine, you know this, I tend to go on a million different tangents, okay? I go in a million different directions. Even if I have like a few bullet point notes of things I want to talk about, it's never happening in order. No matter how much I like think it's going to happen that way, the way that I follow my creativity is just by letting it flow. And that's just who I am. That's how I create. Obviously, not everyone's going to resonate with that. And that's not the point. That's not why I create things. I don't create things for everyone. If I created something that was for everyone, I wouldn't be creating anything of substance. So, something that I feel like we often get wrong is the fact that when we feel that knowing, where we feel that something is seeking us rather than we're out there seeking something outside of ourselves, the misconception is that if we have this knowing, we're supposed to feel certain. Okay. But the point of life is not to feel certain about things. And I think that's why so many of us struggle with anxiety, whether or not we've been clinically diagnosed or not. I honestly don't believe people when they say they don't have anxiety. We all have anxiety. It's a human instinct of ours to have anxiety, because the second that a thought comes through and you think more about it, that's anxiety. Okay, you're literally just you're overthinking something. That's anxiety. You're making something out of something that isn't truth, because your thoughts are not truth. So whether or not it's debilitating to you or not, that's when you get diagnosed and stuff. But we all have anxiety to some extent. Okay. And it's like that quote, pain is inevitable, but misery is a choice. Like, we all experience anxiety that can, alter our thoughts or whatever. And if we don't catch it, then it can turn into misery and it can be debilitating. Anyways, trailing off what I was saying, just because you have that knowing doesn't mean that you're going to feel certain about everything. And it's so similar to our belief in God. Just because you have this knowing that there is a creator and you have all these glimpses every day that give you these hints that you are being guided by something more powerful and more expansive than you can even put into human words, that doesn't mean that you can say with certainty that God is this or God is that, you know? And that's not the point. That's not the point. What we have to realize is that uncertainty is where possibility lies, okay? Our creative ideas thrive in uncertainty. They're created from murky water. And the second that we sit with them and we just let that water sort of clear itself is when we start to actualize those ideas and make them something tangible. And then you actually see your reflection in that water. Ooh, that was kind of deep. That was kind of good. Because that's the cool thing about creating, is that you see yourself in every single part of the process. So the process of you creating something outside of yourself that's tangible in the world is also the same thing as you creating yourself. But yeah, if you live your whole life letting the logical part of your brain run the show, you're never going to do anything expansive. You're not. You're not going to ever see your full potential if you let the logical part of your brain run the show, because that part of your brain is always telling you that you're not doing enough, that there's a right and wrong way of doing things, that you missed the timeline to do it, that it's unsafe to explore the murky water and to wait for it to settle. That's what your logical part of your brain is telling you, because you've conditioned yourself by now to fear the unknown. It's like innate in all of us to feel scared of things that we don't know for certain. But you have to take that leap of faith. That's why it's called a leap of faith. You have to take that leap of faith and just trust that there's going to be something there to catch you. And there will be every single time. There will be every single fucking time, even if it's yourself, even if you are the thing to catch you. Because I think we discredit ourselves so much because we get so used to living in our own physical bodies and in our own minds that when we get so comfortable with that sometimes, it makes us take it for granted when we are the things that are catching ourselves at the end of the day. But you catching yourself is actually God catching yourself. If we want to go there, okay? Like, the biggest misconception is that we need to feel this sense of trust. You know, once that creative idea comes in, we need to automatically trust ourselves and trust the idea in order for it to actualize. But the truth of the matter is that most of the biggest projects that we have been gracious enough to be alive at the same time as, like your favorite songs, your favorite paintings, all that kind of stuff, a lot of that creative work was done from a very uncertain place. And that captures so much emotion in it, which is why it translates to so many people and why, you know, the collective resonates as a whole and it becomes this big, expansive project that a lot of people know about. But most of the time, artists are actually creating without being certain 100% on what they're creating. They're just following that instinct. And if they are 100% certain, they're probably not making anything of substance that's going to resonate with a bunch of people, you know? But just think back to what I said about having that knowing inside of you that something's meant for you and thinking that that means that you should feel 100% certain about it, okay? That logical part of the brain is going to come in. By the way, the logical part of our brain, I don't know if I already said this, but that's our ego. That's our ego. And I believe that our ego is the thing that all the biblical scriptures are talking about when they're talking about sins. It's our ego. And that's why we're technically, quote unquote, born sinners. I don't know. You don't have to believe that. I don't know if I even believe that, but I do to an extent because we all have egos. So we have a right and a wrong mind at the end of the day. And our right mind is our soul. That's the thing that we follow blindly that takes us to more expansive areas. Our ego is constantly trying to be a part of that conversation, but that's why presence is so powerful, because when you're meditating and you're just bringing your awareness to something, a misconception I get a lot that I've realized through teaching the classes that I do is that people think that meditation means that you're supposed to be silencing your mind. But that's literally humanly impossible. Our brains are always thinking. That's what they are wired to do, is think constantly, even when we're sleeping. So meditating is not about silencing your thoughts. It's about bringing your attention to the noise and then being like, okay, cool. Now I'm seeing that I'm able to actually separate myself and look at those thoughts. So who is this person that's looking at those thoughts then? That's who you are. That is who you are. And then once you bring your awareness to the person who's observing those thoughts, that's when you are being present. So I actually want to go all the way back to the beginning where I talked about how everyone is an artist. Because, you know, what does that actually mean? What if we're not actually creating things? Or we don't think we're actually creating things? Number one, you don't think you're creating things because you subconsciously in your brain have wired yourself to believe that creating means this one thing. But you're constantly creating. You are constantly creating thoughts, creating conversations, feelings, all the things. And I want to bring up a little food for thought here, okay? We all know Taylor Swift, okay? This is not a new name that I'm adding to the conversation. We all know Taylor Swift. And there's a reason that we all know Taylor Swift, okay? I don't want to get on my high horse about all the things because I know people have very polarizing feelings about Taylor Swift. It almost feels like you either love her or you hate her. And whether or not you like her or you like her music or whatever, she's obviously the most famous person in the world. So you can't really deny that. And a lot of people will say that she's one of the greatest songwriters of our generation, which I don't actually believe. But that's not me watering down the impact that she's had on our culture and things like that. It's just me saying I don't think she's the best songwriter. Like, boohoo, cry about it. It's not that deep. Okay, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. But from analyzing it from an outside lens, what I've come to realize is that the reason why so many people look up to her as this great songwriter, and you know, you hear people saying she puts emotions into words so easily and whatever, and even if people are not saying that, it's clear that she resonates with a lot of people okay? The reason why she's able to resonate with as many people as she does is because we are all artists ourselves. So Taylor Swift is not actually writing lyrics and saying anything that hasn't been felt already by the collective at whole, by every single human being ever born on this earth. The reason why she resonates with people is because she's talking about things that we have all experienced on some level. Even if you've never been in love before and you've never gotten your heart broken before, you know what it feels like to experience pain, just like you know what it's like to experience joy. And I say to you guys all the time that the beauty that you see in others is inside of you. The beauty that you see in everything in the world is inside of you. And when you're listening to a song and the lyrics are resonating with you, you are the one picking up on the beauty in those lyrics based on your own experience and your own life and mindset and all those things. So, I don't know, I just wanted to bring that up because I think using Taylor Swift as an example, who's someone who has clearly resonated with a lot of people, and that's gotten her to the place where she is. In my eyes, it's so clear when you look at Taylor Swift that she is a channel because she's not saying anything that hasn't been felt before. She's channeling these emotions that are resonating with the collective at stake. One thing that I'm coming to realize in my own creative process is that it's really hard to say with certainty that I feel super confident at every phase because obviously, like, I'm always changing and things like that. But also, the second that I get inspiration and I alchemize it and make something out of it, that's me hiring the bar. You know, I'm just setting the scale even higher. So the next time that I show up, I'm now meeting this new means of creativity that I've created for myself because I've already proven to myself that I can get to that level. So now I'm at the next level and blah, blah, blah. And it just keeps, you keep leveling up. So the bar keeps getting higher. So you're not actually seeing your full potential because you're so concerned on the next level that you're getting to. And it's hard because it makes you feel like you don't have a ton of confidence in what you're doing. You're just kind of blindly trusting, and that's what you're taking as confidence. And I've kind of dappled with the thought of, you know, will I ever feel 100% confident? Is that something that human beings are even capable of feeling? Because even if you're at a point where you feel like you love yourself the most you ever have in your life, that doesn't mean that your ego doesn't still exist and try to come in and make you feel smaller sometimes, you know? There's this Jalen Brunson quote, who is a player on the Knicks, and we just won the championship, and I've annoyed everyone I possibly could about it. But after Jalen Brunson won the NBA championship, he said that his confidence comes from his work ethic. Okay. And I think that's so fucking important because we have this misconception that confidence just kind of falls into our lap the moment that we step into ourselves and, like, also whatever the fuck that means, you know? But the only thing that makes you confident is you taking that scary step, you know? Action is what breeds confidence. You taking a step is what makes you so sure of the next step that you're going to take. And I think that's really important because I'm also starting to realize that I'm at a point in my creative process where I'm pulling so many ideas from my old ideas. Like, I'm just piling my ideas on top of one another and kind of transpiring old ideas into new ones. And it feels like there's just like this kind of like thread throughout my entire creative process that only really makes sense to me. But I really do think that your I made it moment as an artist comes from the second that you realize that you are taking inspiration from your previous ideas, from yourself, rather than your I made it moment being this extravagant moment where you are standing in front of a crowd full of thousands of people and they're all cheering your name. We often hear celebrities and famous people and musicians and things like that talking about those big breakthroughs, those I made it moments being when they're in front of people, when they're in front of these large crowds. And I think that obviously does give you the reassurance that people resonate with what you're creating. But the actual moment where you're telling yourself, I really did something here, is when you are alone, tapping into your creativity and realizing that you are getting inspired by yourself. You are your own inspiration at the end of the day. Even if you're compiling inspiration from things outside yourself, the beauty you see in others is inside of you. So therefore, you are taking that inspiration from yourself in a lot of ways. And also, not to mention, but everything in life is an opportunity for inspiration. Everything. Even a blank fucking wall is an opportunity for inspiration. And you just have to let yourself believe that. You're never going to be inspired by anything unless you let yourself be inspired by things. And not for nothing, but I think when you get to the point where you actually understand how much creativity adds to your life and it teaches you so much, it helps you step into your most authentic self, it helps you trust, it helps you gain confidence, all these things. We start to latch onto our creativity to the point where we're unconsciously controlling it more than we're letting it flow through us. And the thing that's destructive about it is that we will start to then look at everything else in our life. The job that we have to work to support ourselves, the Sunday brunch that we're going to. We look at all these things as distractions from our creative process. When in reality, the greatest conduit to our creative process is experience, is allowing ourselves to just simply live and be present in the moment in what we're doing. And that's when you take inspiration from things. That's when you get those aha moments. And maybe it's not in the moment that you are being present at that Sunday brunch, but maybe it's after the brunch when you reflect on something that your friend said that made you think of something in the moment that you put a pin in to think of later. And now you're creating a whole idea out of it. You have to let yourself experience. You have to let yourself live your life, And looking at anything outside of your creative project as a distraction is so incredibly destructive to your creative process. And not for nothing, but you have to stop looking at your creative process as a project. Because I know we use the word project, but I want to clear that up. Your creative process is your artistry, and artistry doesn't have a means to an end. There's no end to an artist's creations because even artists that have passed away are still impacting the world today. They're still changing culture and impacting the work that is to come after them, So thinking of your work as this project that you have to tend to, that everything else is distracting you from, is you looking at it as if there's some end goal here, that you're eventually going to get to a point where there is no more inspiration and you're cut off and you did all that you could. But as long as you are alive, you are a creative being and you are using your creativity. You are harnessing that. Does that make sense? Okay, I think that's all I have for you guys today. But before I go, we have to do our weird wrap up, okay? Because it's just what we do here now. So for the weird wrap up this week, what I want to talk about super fast before I let you go on with your days is how we use clothing to express ourselves and also how we can use it as a tool to harness our creativity. So I'm going to keep this very short and sweet, but I just want to leave you guys with this. When you're looking through your closet or you're shopping, whatever you're doing, and you're putting on an outfit, notice how you are playing safe, okay? Notice in what ways you are just following trends. You're just wearing what's in right now. You are telling yourself you can't put certain colors together. Certain patterns clash and you can't wear them. Certain textures don't look right together. This, that, and the other thing, okay? Notice where your limitations are with how you express yourself through clothing, because I think that can be a great channel for you to understand more about yourself. And I've been using that a lot lately. And I'm sitting here and I got a striped shirt on and I got gingham socks, okay? And I put that on intentionally this morning because I think it looks interesting. And anything that I initially look at and think is interesting, I follow that now. I follow that impulse. And my coolest outfits, in my opinion, have come from that exact thought where I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Because if you're not excited about it, then you're playing safe. If you're not excited about it, then you are just playing it safe. And playing it safe is never going to get you anywhere. Okay? Go back to the younger you. I'm talking like elementary school you. When we were little tiny human beings under the age of 10 years old, trends weren't as much of a thing, okay? And I don't know how old you are listening to this, but social media wasn't really that apparent when I was in elementary school. And the only trends that came were like maybe you saw someone wearing a pair of sneakers that you thought was cool, whatever, and someone else got them, and then it started like a mini trend within your bubble of school that you were in. But most of the time, what people deemed as cool when you were at that age was someone going outside of the box. I remember I had this pair of rainbow Skechers. And I remember being embarrassed at one point about them because they were Skechers, not even because they were rainbow. I loved the fact that they were rainbow, but I was embarrassed that they were Skechers because that wasn't seen as like a cool brand at the time. And then a girl in my class got the same pair of sneakers as me. And I was like, "Oh, am I cool?" Like, did she get those because I have them? Is she copying me? And they say that copying is the highest form of flattery. So I recorded an episode on that, I think 2 weeks ago or something like that. So go back and listen if you want to hear about copying culture and trend culture and all that stuff, because I still have different thoughts about, I don't know, I have a bunch of thoughts about that. But it goes to show that those bold outfits that you put together when you were younger were the things that were actually cool. Like, girl, I pulled up to third grade in a fucking neon yellow tracksuit from Justice, which is a brand that doesn't even exist anymore, but all the cool girls were wearing Justice at the time, okay? And the Justice letters were sequins, and it was the brightest color I've ever seen in my life. Head to fucking toe, with a bow in my hair, okay? Like, go back to that girl, okay? Go back to her, because you can learn a few things from that. I'm just yapping now, so I'm gonna go. But sending you all the love in the world, all the patience with yourself in the world, and all the creative inspiration, okay? I'm just channeling it from me to you. Yeah. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and can't wait to talk to you in the next episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media platforms. They'll always be linked in the show notes below. As always, video episodes are exclusively on YouTube, so go check that out at Lizzie Arduino, which will always be in my show notes as well. But yeah, that's all I got. Anyways, kisses. Talk to you guys soon.